Okay. I have a bit of a problem where I'm planning the first session of a new campaign. There's a couple things I want to accomplish in it, but one of them is a little bit of a dungeon crawl through a buried temple city. And I'm not entirely sure how I want to do that. So I'm going to just draft out a few ideas here and I'm going to record my process as I do it. So that's what I'm doing. Here we go. I suppose when I'm first thinking about this city, there's a city with a whole bunch of individual buildings. Um, I'm also wondering if I should make some or all of them a little more connected to each other. Or if they should all just remain entirely separate structures. Not quite sure. If you were to design a buried temple city, what would you do? Multiple structures or interconnected? Interconnected gives you more opportunity for a dungeon crawl, but if you keep them separate, it requires a little bit more exploration and kind of up and down and diving. So one pattern is to kind of have a whole bunch of individual chambers, maybe some of those a little bit connected. It's funny hearing my wife and kids argue about how to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. So if I do something like this, then there's an opening into this little small chamber here. And that opening is going to be in through the ceiling, maybe through this bit here. There will be opportunity for like sand piled in places. Definitely a lot of sand piled in here. So they would come in, they'd go through and explore the space, and then they would come out in the same location, or they would find some other passage or way out, maybe out through here. And then it's on to the next spot. So if I do it this way, each individual spot is sort of its own sort of mini, like we're sort of disconnected overall in the dungeon design. If I want to force them to explore the space before entering into the final chamber of the dungeon, maybe where sort of boss monster is, I'd need them to go through and collect maybe a relic or keys in these different spaces. But then you got to ask yourself now, why on earth would there be keys to like the main temple grounds in these little houses or shops or whatever they used to be? I suppose you could say that what the party is really exploring is the homes of the old priests who managed the temple. There's an idea. Um, or if it's a shop, there might be equipment that they can use to break down a barrier that's in their way to getting into the main room of the temple. Got to be careful handing with what you hand your players, but if I give them a bunch of explosives to blow up some boulders, they're going to find a clever way to get past that boulder and keep the explosives. So that's gotta be a little careful about that. Let's think. Although if it's all interconnected, I have more opportunity to kind of treat it like a self-contained a dungeon. My point is, like, if it's individual dwellings, there's really no contiguity to the space that demands that they enter one room, then the next, and the next, right? There's no flow to it. They just have to go in and pick a spot, and they're just picking around, exploring that way, which is fun. That's a non-traditional dungeon design, and I like to do non-traditional dungeons. But I also want to give them something where they can kind of understand the challenge that's in front of them and give them an opportunity to overcome a particular challenge. And if it's just a whole bunch of random spaces, there's really the challenge is spend time. Like, that's the solution: is you spend the time to overcome that challenge. So maybe if they get some hints about the street layout and they get an address on where to search for the next part of the relic or um, key or bit of the puzzle, then I might be able to make something like this work. Even if it is an underground temple, I do want the last bit of the dungeon at least to be a bit more of a dungeon crawl through a larger building. And whether that's I did say I wanted this to be a temple city. It might be a old fortress or a castle. Might equally make sense. I do like the idea of them exploring an underground temple to some long forgotten deity that's been forgotten long under the sands. It's been lost to the sands of time, so to speak. I think I'm going to start with this idea and explore it a little bit. So if I create my dungeon layout, I'm going to have my larger structure somewhere, like a little bit more rectangular structures. I feel like this one ought to be more rectangular. I'm going to have some other structures around it. And why are they not all square to each other? Because that's boring. Well, maybe some structures might be next to it a little bit longer, like this right here could be a warehouse. And this would be the temple. These right here could be the priests' homes. And out here could be the I don't know, the workers' homes. Maybe out here there's a room for a market, or what used to be a market before it was all buried. Although if the priests' homes are all connected like this, and they are all square to each other, it gives an opportunity for some passages between them, and tells a little story too about how the priests were connected at home as well as in their work, and maybe there's a bit of intrigue and a little bit more of a story there about how one priest sort of snuck into another priest's home and nobody outside saw it happening, or I don't know, something, or there's some room here to tell the story of an old murderer who like entered into this house and no one saw him again because he really snuck out this way and snuck out this way in a disguise. Like the murderer snuck in here and walked out wearing priestly garb, so everybody just thought it was another priest coming out. That could be fun. This is a long dead place though, so that story would need to come back around, where he had to go back into. Maybe try to wander off, realized he couldn't, had to come back into the temple. And then some tragic event occurred in the temple, maybe something that even led to the something magical in the area broke, or maybe it's because of this murder that he found something in the temple, and then the gods cursed the area and buried the whole city because of his actions, and now he's like an undead monster still wandering around, feeling the regret of his final moments, leading to the demise of his entire home. Maybe not to the demise of the temple. It depends on how pious of a man this villain was, but okay. All right, so if I do this structure where there's individual houses, maybe some linked priest houses, what's preventing access into the temple? So let's say there's a temple like in the good old glory days. Let's say there's a door here and a door here into the temple, maybe a couple side doors here for the priests, and maybe a little side door here for easy access to the warehouse. Maybe even a small covered canopy so that they could walk into the warehouse without getting too bothered by the elements. Could be another sort of canopy here, and then these would lead. Maybe these two houses would lead into there. Now it's a sort of temple complex that the party might be able to explore. And within the temple, there's going to be an internal structure as well. But the question is, if there's so many entrances to a building, and practically just about a large building like this would have several entrances, what's to stop the party from progressing? Is the blockage somewhere inside of the temple, or is it they're prevented from getting to the temple at all? It makes sense to me for this whole area to be caved in and filled with sand, and maybe the structure collapsed here. This would be collapsed. At the same time, I kind of like the idea of, let's put a question mark there, I kind of like the idea of them wandering this entire temple complex. That's a really cool idea. So maybe all of this is buried entirely, and they can see the upper parts of the temple, right? And they can see the upper parts of the temple sticking above the dunes. Um, but they don't really see a way in. They could always break or chip their way in through the corner here, I guess, but then they'd maybe have a long drop down, which might be okay if they have a rope. Or perhaps in one of these in these sort of workers or layman's homes, they might find like a clay tablet or something that discusses the routes through the temple. Maybe this one of these is like a cleaner of the temple, and they just kind of keep notes about their route going through and where they store supplies. It doesn't have to be a written tablet. These people can still be illiterate and still just draw drawings with their own maps of these areas. That may tell them that there is an entrance, okay, like a clay tablet with map to the entrance of temple, right, via priests' homes. Maybe they'll enter in through here, maybe a sort of large, maybe this right here will be a common house. And the person would just start in the common house and clean there on their way through the priest's rooms. Then they'd come back and then they'd come back into the temple, and they'd make their rounds, and they'd leave out through. Then they'd just leave out the same way. I guess if they're a cleaner, they would need to visit the warehouse for supplies, or maybe there's another supply house. So maybe instead of a common house, this is a supply house. They'd pick up their supplies, do their cleaning, come back, drop off what they need to, refill what they need to, prepare for the next day, and then leave and drop off their tools and leave for the day. That's how the party would get their access into this part of the temple, by following that cleaner's same path. I kind of like that idea. I also like the idea of somewhere there being something that blocks access to the deeper recesses of the temple. So maybe there's a stair here. That's going to be a spiral stair. Stair down, of course. We can't go up if we're going in an underground dungeon crawl. So there's a stair down, and at the bottom there ought to be something that prevents them from progressing forward unless they unlock some puzzle or find some key somewhere in here. So I kind of like the idea of a key being found in the priest's quarters. I like the idea of putting it here, so that they have to go a little bit further, explore more this way to come back and to progress and find the stairs and the key. I wonder if you can hear that. Kids just being so noisy. You know, I know my videos aren't very high quality, but I don't really have the time. Anything else? I've got a family. You can probably hear them in the background, just howling like wolves. I've got a full-time job. I'm not a full-time creator, although I'd love to be. But I'm still making it happen. Sometimes you just accept that you need to learn somehow, and the only way to get started is to just get started. Once you get started, that's a huge part of the battle, and then keeping it up is another huge component of that. But as long as I can try to kind of keep it up and make progress here, then I think I win. I get to express myself. I get to share my thoughts with you. Maybe help you in your creative journey, give you some encouragement to pursue your dreams, even though it's not perfect, and to allow it to not be perfect, and to say that's okay. And even though the kids are screaming in the background, my wife is screaming at the kids to do what they're supposed to do, you know, we just work with the circumstances that we're in. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean for this video to get kind of philosophical there, but kind of hard not to think about it. A little distracting from actually working on what I came here to work on. So, yeah, I think I have a good base here. Let's just call that good. Okay. Thanks for being here for part of my creative journey. I hope yours is going well. Let me know how it's going, and what you're working on down in the comments. And you like and subscribe, and have yourself a wonderful day. I'll catch you next time. Bye.